Greetings, hunters. I apologize for the randomness of this one. I did originally plan to wait until I could combine the 4th, 5th, and 6th generations into one big video like I did with 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. But me being me, I overthought it to the point where I kept just saying I'll wait till later. I am learning to just bite the bullet and just get stuff to you guys, because at least then I can learn from the mistakes in a much more informed way. I feel like I conveyed my feelings towards the 4th generation throughout these shorts pretty well enough, but just for the hell of it, here's the timestamp if you just want to jump past me rambling, but I thought this would be fun. Kind of like when I went to see the Lord of the Rings Extended Edition in theaters, and Peter Jackson had these segments between the videos where he would just talk about them. That was so unbelievably cool to me. The 4th generation of Monster Hunter is, in my opinion, the most important part of Monster Hunter's history as a franchise. As, to me, it achieved throughout each game to be what I consider the pinnacle in the 3 critical tenets of Monster Hunter: story, gameplay, and the monsters. Going in order, we're going to start with Monster Hunter 4 and 4 Ultimate. And just for the sake of ease, anytime I say Monster Hunter 4 going forward, I'm referring to all of them, just before any of you come at me in the comments. Monster Hunter 4 is praised for many reasons, and rightfully so, but one stands above the rest of its many, many accolades. Monster Hunter as a franchise has never put too much focus on the narrative part of their games, to such an extent that, quite frankly, the minimal extra steps they've taken so far in Monster Hunter Wilds were basically leaps and bounds compared to previous titles. So much so that the community often refers to it as Monster Hunter 4 2. That's not to say the story isn't there in older games, but the main appeal of these games is in the name. You're a monster hunter, go hunt monsters. Brilliant. Monster Hunter 4 delivers on this front excellently well, there's no doubt in that. But what makes it truly stand out is that this was the game that they found the secret sauce of what kind of narrative fits these games best. Monster Hunter 4 is celebrated for its narrative for one reason. They add significance to repeated encounters with a monster you have very much become familiar with. Gore Magala, in my opinion, needs to do so painfully little to be considered one of the best things Capcom has ever given us. It is legendary as a monster, famous for its unique creature design, and even simpler, just so unbelievably awesome. There's no other words. I mean, there are, but I'm just being lazy. But then there's this one. The singular Gore Magala we are forced to fight at different points of our journeys. First, we are ambushed on the Arlok in the open waters. We are completely unprepared to fight something of this scale, and yet we don't have a choice. Then we're attacked trying to rescue the Ace Hunters, and a supposed final encounter in the Ancestral Steppe. This single choice is nothing short of genius, because this beast put us to the test when we were at our weakest to face him, and the 2 more times we barely managed it. Both of us learned and got stronger from our encounters with one another, because the alternative was just an early grave. I will never forget that cutscene where he ascended to the pinnacle of his potential and became Shagaru Magala. Both of us now were at our strongest, ready for a final bout. I myself remember this so well because I was convinced the one in the cutscene couldn't be the same one. I just killed him in the Ancestral Steppe. There's no way it was him. But atop the Heaven's Mount, he stared me down in a way that felt different to anything else I expected. The beast didn't attack straight away. It instead flaunted its newfound strength and seemed to take my measure of whether or not I was even worthy of its attention. Sitting there, I said out loud, "It's you, isn't it, old boy?" And call it insane, but I swear it nodded at me when I said that. This hunt felt so unique compared to any other moment I have had in this series that I genuinely felt, in the time, if I failed, I needed to start a new save. I was so immersed that I needed to win, not only for myself, but to prove to an old rival who was the strongest. When I landed that final strike, the well of emotions I felt were staggering. Everything from pride at my success to a melancholy that while I could always hunt another Gore Magala and even another Shagaru Magala, he was a one-time deal. And the feeling would never reach that level again. That moment did not have a single word of dialogue. And yet I will remember it for all my days as a reason why not only these games, but video games in general are so important to me. Monster Hunter Generations came into the scene in 2015, and while I myself did not play it until sometime in 2016, I credit this game with one major accolade. It got me back into Monster Hunter. My first time playing these games, as I'm sure many of you know, was Monster Hunter Tri, and I was so captivated by it on just about every level. The cover art, the gameplay, the armor, the weapons, I couldn't get enough. That was until the great Jaggy utterly humbled my ass so badly, I put the game down for a very long time. And yes, it was entirely my fault. I played the game in the completely wrong way. I saw big weapons and treated it like any other hack and slash I played at the time, only to be confused as to why this raptor was taking upwards of 20 minutes to even feel like it had taken any damage, only for, by that time, I ran out of potions, and I was just slowly picked away by both it and its underlings. Yeah, it was a recipe for disaster that was entirely one of my own creation. And I definitely did come back to it a while later. It wasn't until Tri-Ultimate that I sunk over 900 hours into it. Being but a small boy with no money, I pretty much gave up on getting Monster Hunter 4 as I was in school. I had more exams coming up every year until finals, leaving precious little time for just about anything else. And it wasn't until I was both in college and had my own money that I was on a random trip with my girlfriend at the time when I saw it there, Monster Hunter Generations on the shelf. And my boy, my precious baby boy Glavenus, captured my heart in the purest way only this franchise can. I saw a red Carnotaurus with a giant sword for a tail and simply said, I need to fight that and turn it into an outfit. And after that, I remember going off and buying 4U, Monster Hunter Stories 1, all within the span of a month. Playing Monster Hunter Generations was so much fun for me, as just the Faded 4 alone spoke to my soul as just incredibly superb monsters. Their designs, their weapons, their armor, and how they're all connected like a legendary team of beasts whose goal is to stop you from becoming the best you can. Yeah, so I praise Monster Hunter 4 for its narrative, and Generations for its monsters. But then the Big Daddy shows up. Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. Whoa. This game has the award for some of the best monsters ever made. I'll admit I'm just playing favorites that I'm giving Generations the monsters title and this one a different one, because it has the inarguable award for just the best innovation and refinement of the old style of gameplay, with so many bells and whistles in the form of hunting arts and styles that it might as well be a freaking marching band. It is an achievement of this franchise that Generations Ultimate is as fun as it is. Event quests of every range. Every weapon has a minimum of 1 million ways it can be played or built. Plus, it gave us these two, so, you know, the crown is more than earned. But it shows just how unbelievably impressive the 4th generation was, that the competition was this close in so many ways. There was no, oh, this is the definitive best game, because I love each of them. I can't lie, I could go on about this particular topic for so much longer, but at the risk of repeating myself, and also this has gone on long enough, I will say this. Please enjoy the rest of the video, guys. Hit the like, sub, and comment buttons because, well, it does help. Stay incredible. Happy birthday if it's your birthday. And as always, everyone, good hunting. Gen 3 may always be home to me, but the 4th generation is home to some of the best creations Capcom has ever made. But like always, we have to start at the beginning, and so this time we're kicking it off with the Konchu and the Remobra. The Konchu are a very tenacious little insect, and out of all the smaller ones, they're definitely my favorites. Their design looks like a weird hybrid between a pill bug and a lobster, having those long forward-facing claws, and I'll admit I'm stretching a bit here. Their shell is impressively strong for their size, and having the ability to curl up into a ball, they have no issues charging straight at you when you least expect it, so keep an eye out for them. They also have a habit of latching themselves onto larger monsters and become essentially body armor for them, causing many of your attacks to bounce right off. Now, if you're hunting a Yian-Garuga, I'd say be wary of them. They can double as both food and flaming cannonballs when threatened, so really keep an eye on them. Aiming for their underside is the best way to dispatch them should you need to craft very formidable armor out of them. The Remobra, on the other hand, has a much less direct approach. These flying snakes are content to fly just out of reach and spit poison at you. And what's worse is that they are pack hunters, so I hope you brought enough antidotes. They are also commonly found where elder dragons are known to reside. Being scavengers, it makes sense to follow something that you know is going to secure a kill and leave plenty of scraps. Now, despite how annoying they can be, I do like these two. They are pretty understated, but as I have said before, there's nothing wrong with that. I have said before that the 4th generation is home to some of the best monsters this series has ever produced, and in my opinion that includes the new herbivores, the Moofah and the Larinoth. The Larinoth are tied for being my favorite herbivores in this series. These huge sauropods are found nearly exclusively in the Jurassic frontier, and despite their enormous size and weight, they are very peaceful creatures. Their long necks allow them to feed upon plants simply far out of reach for many other herbivores. They are known as the neck cry wyvern, due to the unique sound they can produce with the organ on top of their heads. Now, when they're fully grown, anything smaller than the average brute wyvern can do little to them, because these animals will fight back if pushed to do so, and I'm confident a Maccao loses that fight. The only thing I hold against them is that I would love to see a full-scale fight against a sauropod monster, but I'm still happy with them regardless. The Moofah are the ones they are tied with. The Moofah function identically to the Kelpie in many aspects, but instead of deers, their design leans more towards alpacas. But what I love about them is that they are a key part of Burna's trade economy. Whether used as livestock, for hauling goods, or their wool selling at a high price to make various clothing. But the main reason that I love them is that my pet Moofah named Millie is the most precious thing in the world to me, and I will overturn nations to defend her. I'm gonna put the Moofah higher because any animal that you can pet in these games is already top tier, and the Larinoth are still fantastic creatures as they are. We have seen quite a variety of raptors up to now, and I have had a variety of opinions about each of them. But I have no hesitation in saying that the Great Maccao is my favorite raptor of them all. The Great Maccao is one of the most realistic raptor designs this series has put forward. As much like their real-life counterparts, their bodies are mainly covered in feathers, but the Great Maccao itself is about the size of a Ceratosaurus, so close enough, I guess? I remember seeing this monster for the first time in Generations Ultimate, and I just thought it was really cool. The bright colors, on top of just being spectacular, are mainly used for intimidation against a lot of attackers, but if that fails them, they have some impressive defenses on their own. One is that their hands are highly developed and covered in very thick scales, so these monsters will just straight up punch you and do so quite often. But by far their most unique defense comes from their tails. This tail can support their entire body weight with ease, and adding in the spikes they have for balance, it can set up a really impressive attack. Rearing up on their tails, they will use it as a springboard to launch themselves straight at you. Kicking with their powerful legs through the air can do some real damage to an inexperienced hunter. Now, knowing this, targeting the tail is an obvious weak point, but if you time an attack just right and hit them while they're flying through the air, you can counter them and do some real damage to them when they fall back to the ground. Now, they differ from the other raptors in more ways than just aesthetically, because much like the other raptors, they're commonly found in packs leading smaller counterparts called Maccao. But unlike the rest, the Great Maccao has no real control over its underlings and so can't coordinate attacks like, say, the Iodrome or the Velocidrome. And typically they're found wandering alone, and the pack will only really jump in when food is available to them. But if you would just rather not deal with larger numbers, I'd say aim for the feathers on its head. Once broken, the underlings will disperse and ignore any of its commands. I love the Great Maccao's design and gameplay above all other raptors, and once you add in its fantastic armor design, it's not even close. A while ago, when the Monster Hunter popularity poll video was released, many of the placements surprised me and many didn't, but I really did not expect the Seltas to be that low. I mean, okay, fair, when compared to the other Neoterrans, he doesn't exactly rank high against such stiff competition, well, almost all, but I really like these monsters even on their own. It makes me think of taking the Power Ranger Kaiju formula to a Wasp-Beetle hybrid, and it honestly just works. The Seltas are exceptional flyers due to their lightweight and large wings, and with this mobility they will aim to impale you on that large spiked head crest. Yeah, their solo fight is nothing to write home about, but it's functional as a low-rank teaser to the behemoth that's ahead of you, and that behemoth is the Seltas Queen. The Seltas Queen, in my eyes, can only be summed up as bug tank, and damn, she has earned that title. The queens are powerhouses on their own, having a rock-hard carapace, a massive pair of shears at the end of its tail, and are a lot faster than something that big should be. But the real threat is when these two combine their strengths. The Seltas Queen releases pheromones to attract any thralls to aid her in combat. Now, once they get close enough, she will inject a substance into their bodies with her tail that gives her complete control over them. Now, once they have caught them, they are completely at their mercy. They will use them to fly, have additional ranged attacks, and, well, if the battle is going badly, they will swiftly turn on the males and cannibalize them for energy, and then swiftly call upon another. Moving on. Hey guys, quick side note, while I was gathering footage for this video, I had honestly completely forgotten what the Desert Seltas Queens do with the males instead of just simply eating them. Because, yeah, cannibalism, not a good way to go. But being launched as a projectile so hard and so fast that upon impact your body completely shatters, my god. These two are a great duo fight, which many games I have played taught me can be done very well or very wrong. Plus, my Power Ranger comparison earlier was right on the money, because look at that armor, it's so good. And also, the dual blades are a personal favorite of mine to use if the term means anything to you. I do prefer their base designs over their desert counterparts though, as I just like that vibrant green. But while they're not the best in this class of monsters, they are fantastic. It should come as no surprise that I have talked about this series with both friends and fellow fans for a very long time. But one conversation that always manages to pop up is just how well this series has lasted and what we think the key to that success is. Now, while we will all have various answers to that question, and feel free to put them in the comments below, for me at least, it's their ability to make monster designs that cover the entire spectrum of impressions, whether it be badass, simple, terrifying, or even questionable, but above all, unique. And while some monsters in this series are more unique than others, we all have at least one or two that stand out to us for various reasons. And for me, the Kecha Wacha is certainly one of them. These fanged beasts are one of the more unique members of this class, as most of its brethren are mammalian powerhouses like the Rajang or the Gammoth. The Kecha Wacha put all of its stats into dexterity. Their core design concept is based on the very fascinating II lemur, and other than having much more vibrant fur than their real-life counterparts, they really didn't venture too far from that base design. But as is typical with this series, they did add the small trunk of a tapir and the membranes of a flying squirrel for added style points. Fair enough. Now, while they are generally very timid creatures and prefer to spend their time just swinging to the trees, above all, they're very curious. Which is unfortunate because it has led to many incidents of them attacking merchants and other travelers, which is where you come in. When hunting them, I advise exploiting their sharp eyesight and their very keen hearing. Screamer pods and flash pods can incapacitate them very easily. But this isn't a foolproof strategy by any means, because when they become enraged, they use their ears to form a protective mask which will nullify their effectiveness. Now, the pattern on its ears that form this mask are a great example of a concept called mimicry camouflage, in which addition to hiding from predators, they will also aim to frighten them by appearing as something much more dangerous. My favorite example of this is the owl butterfly, which is gorgeous, but god, it is haunting. Now, the Ash Kecha Wacha is a great variation, especially in its color scheme, but I also can't decide whether I find it hilarious or dumb that for some reason it can now shoot fireballs from its nose. Well, whatever. Now, I really like the Kecha Wacha, mainly because of how much it surprised me when I first saw it. The designers did an excellent job crafting something from a base design that I wouldn't have even thought of using, and to them I say, well done. There are more than a few animals out there that I am eternally grateful for the fact that they are just much smaller than us. Some out of a personal fear as it stands, and others because we as a species simply wouldn't stand a chance against them if they saw us as a food source. One of them being frogs. No, I'm deadly serious, because instantly disappearing into the silent maw of a giant frog and your final words to be drowned out by this is just not how I want to meet my end. Someone at Capcom must have thought this too, and so made the very aptly titled Demon Frog the Tetsucabra. Now, despite the intro, I am a massive fan of this frog. The Tetsucabra line takes up 3 slots of the current total of 9 amphibians, having a subspecies and a deviant in its ranks. Now, design-wise, these monsters possess very bulky frames, similar to the bullfrog, but interestingly, their color scheme is eerily similar to the strawberry poison dart frog with its red and blue skin. Now, instead of the typical rubbery skin of smaller frogs, the Tetsucabra is covered in strong rubbery scales, giving it an impressive level of defense. Now, these monsters are also part of what I like to call the seeing you is enough reason to attack you club of monsters, and are well armed for this task. Those massive tusks are fused directly to their jaws and are impressively strong and durable weapons, and would be enough on their own, but this creature uses them to rip up massive boulders straight out of the ground. Now, once done, they can use them for both offense and defense, whether simply throwing them at you or even using them as a shield to deflect attacks. They are even strong enough to leap into the air and bring these rocks crashing down on top of you with their highly developed legs. Also, when fighting the Tetsucabra, I noticed they use a lot of moves found in sumo wrestling, having a lot of stomps and charges, which fits way too well, honestly. Another thing to keep an eye out for is their projectile saliva, which will drain your stamina almost instantly, making you a much easier target. Now, if you attack the tusks enough and manage to break them, they will be unable to dig up the larger boulders and drastically reduce their offensive capabilities. Now, the Berserk Tetsucabra is a great late-game counterpart to the base design, but my absolute favorite things about this monster are as follows. The fact that they have a bite force strong enough to crush those boulders to dust is both horrifying and hilarious to me, especially when considering they're ambush predators. And the other is that despite how menacing they look, they are doting fathers to their young. They keep them safe in their mouths and will avoid eating for prolonged periods of time until they have developed enough to walk alongside them. But the one thing that is universal across all 3 of these monsters is that the armor is absolutely amazing. Honestly, a top 10 in my eyes. The Tetsucabra is a monster I love dearly, and for being an early game monster, Capcom did not have to go this hard, but I am eternally grateful they did. One of my favorite parts of making these videos is getting to study the real-life design inspirations behind many of these monsters, because it does so much to make them feel like more than just a monster in a video game and help ground them in a sense of reality. Now, saying all of that, being someone with crippling arachnophobia, researching the Nerscylla did me absolutely no favors at all, but I did it anyway in the name of making sure both you and I get to truly appreciate these monsters to the fullest. Rant over, let's get on with it. The Nerscylla was the debut member of the Temnoceron class of monsters, and while there's only really 3 main ones, it's by far my favorite of them all. The Nerscylla is a rather unorthodox arachnid design though, having a pallid white carapace with highlights of orange across the armored segments on its legs and its pedipalps. Now, I couldn't find a direct one-to-one design inspiration, but my most educated guess would be a tarantula with aspects of an orb weaver spider. Now, my main reason for this conclusion is based on how they hunt. The Nerscylla will wait for prey to wander into its web domain, and seeing an opportunity will inject them with a sleep-inducing toxin, making them easier to wrap in a cocoon made of silk, which they will then inject digestive fluids to liquefy their prey. But ignoring the fact that something this big can be stealthy, just no. It can also hold its own in a prolonged fight against even many of the larger wyverns out there, using its web for mobility or to entangle its opponents. Their fangs can also extend the full length of their bodies, giving them a hell of a gap closer, but to prevent a fight from lasting too long, the spikes on their backs are crystallized poison strong enough to make even a Tigrex think twice. Now, to any who don't know, none of what I have mentioned previously is what makes the Nerscylla truly terrifying. No, that's their impressive level of intelligence. The Nerscylla themselves are very susceptible to lightning damage, and so to get around this, they have a very morbid solution, and that comes from the Gypceros. Their thick rubbery skin is very resistant to light, so not only will the Nerscylla consume them, but flay the skin from their bodies to wear as a lightning resistant cloak. The shrouded Nerscylla will instead hide under the sands, mimicking trapdoor spiders, but it also wears the skin of a Kezu for similar reasons. Fair enough. Now, to quickly add some positivity into this morbid mess, a fan theory that I love and consider canon, and if it isn't, I don't care, proposes that since tarantulas will often keep pet frogs to protect their eggs, it's theorized that Nerscylla does the same with juvenile Tetsucabra, and I thank T-Com and Shark for creating the Nerscylla's lullaby. It's funny how much I love spider-based monsters in video games, despite how terrified I am of them in real life. The Nerscylla is an absolutely amazing execution of a great spider monster, and seeing her in the Forbidden Lands was a real treat. But I must ask, whoever decided to add the Nerscylla hatchlings, just why is there always so many of them, and they're just... no. Please, no.
This is how I pictured the design meeting for today's monster went. Hey guys, I have a great idea for a shark monster for our upcoming title. That's amazing, the underwater mechanic did so well. I'm sure the players would love to fight a Leviathan-sized shark. Actually, we're not bringing the underwater gameplay back for this game, so we're making a land shark instead. Oh, okay, that's still really cool, and we have a lot of good concepts to work with that idea. And we're making it part frog and giving it Sub-Zero's ice armor. Sold. And with that, we got the Zamtrios. There are plenty of well-made land shark monsters in various media, but to me, the Zamtrios is one of the best and the most unique. These Arctic-dwelling beasts are extremely territorial and dangerous animals, and oftentimes the only warning you have that you've entered their turf is a large fin cutting through the ice. Despite how rubbery their skin looks, it's actually made up of razor-sharp scales that can rend smaller targets to pieces on contact. Now, being a giant shark-based monster, I'm sure you can guess that its massive mouth filled with razor-sharp, self-replacing teeth is something you should steer well clear of. But the Zamtrios has more tricks than that up its sleeve. One being that their bodies are filled with a liquid that freezes upon contact with the air, which they use for a multitude of purposes. Things like shooting large blocks of ice and concentrated ice beams from their mouth are pretty standard. But when pushed enough, they will begin to secrete this liquid from their skin. As it freezes, it forms an impressive armor covered in spikes and includes an ice spear on its head. This particular spear is a reference to the drill-like horn that the young Zamites possess, but they lose as they grow. Now, this armor enhances both their offensive and defensive capabilities, but they also have one final form that they use. Now, when enraged enough, this same liquid in their bodies will begin to evaporate. This process will cause their bodies to expand considerably and essentially balloon themselves. This form makes them much slower, yes, but they will use all this additional weight to crush you underneath them. Now, inflicting enough damage is the best way to make them release this buildup of gas and bring them back to normal. Now, the Tiger Stripe Zamtrios is an honestly okay subspecies to me. I just like the base design more. Also, the Zamites are just really cool juvenile monsters, and the way they drill into your body to feed is both hilarious, but looks ungodly painful. The Zamtrios is such a unique and badass monster, and being able to say the phrase, "let's go hunt the great white shark frog," is one of the reasons I love this series so much. Of all the monster classes we have discussed and have yet to, one of them is filled with so much potential just waiting to be released, and that's the snake wyverns. There may be very few of them, but each one is incredible, and today we're starting off with the very first we were ever introduced to, the Najarala. These monsters are a fantastic example of chimeric creature design, fusing together elements of the king cobra with those hooded scales, the rattle of a rattlesnake, and the beak and general coloration of the macaw. Each of these elements come together beautifully to form a creature that looks straight out of Aztec mythology. The scales covering their bodies are both its main method of defending itself, but they can also be used as weapons. These scales can massively amplify sound waves, whether from its roar or if they're just shaken together. When hunting, they will scatter these scales across a wide area to cut off any escape routes that their prey might take. When detached, they become incredibly sensitive to loud noises and begin to vibrate. Once a sound gets loud enough, they will eventually shatter and launch shrapnel at anything near them. They also have a paralyzing neurotoxin which can be delivered through their fangs, and this helps them set up their preferred method of hunting. They will begin to encircle their prey, and when confident, they will use their massive bodies to constrict and crush the life out of their prey. Something to be wary of in the field, though, is when they attack using their tails. Instead of simply swiping you away like many monsters do, they will instead use their tails to bring you much closer to them where they're waiting to encircle you. Now, when you're this big and this well armored, many would think that it would slow them down, but no. They are exceptionally agile monsters. This level of speed comes from their smooth underbellies, allowing them to glide across many surfaces, but also their small limbs help balance their massive frames. The title Najarala is also just amazing. I love its color scheme and how it uses its scales to ricochet blasts of water at its prey. The Najarala is incredibly well made and incredibly well designed, and if this is the standard for snake wyverns, I can only imagine what Capcom will do with them one day. Something I love doing when talking to friends who don't play Monster Hunter is to summarize any monster that they ask me about into a sentence to see how much about them I can convey. It's a true testament to their design process because you can tell so much about each monster even if you've never fought them, such as Samurai Hermit Crab for the Shogun Ceannataur, Dracula Dragon for the Malzeno, and for the Seregios it's just
stab, stab, stab.
The second flagship of the 4th generation, the Seregios is one of the most menacing monsters in these games both in design and attitude. They follow the standard wyvern blueprint for the most part with some subtle differences. Its title of the 1,000-blade wyvern is one of the most accurate by far. Every inch of their bodies is designed to hurt you, Whether it starts with their zygodactyl talons built for crushing prey, their twin spike spear tails, the large cleaver blade on their heads, or the razor-sharp golden scales covering every inch of their bodies. This design isn't just for show, however, because the only thing sharper than their blades is their personalities. Think of a chainsaw that's actively trying to kill you. Just about every second of their lives is a battle. Whether for better territories, food, or other resources, it doesn't matter. If they want it, they will fight for it. And these fights rarely end cleanly. These monsters used to be rare to see at one point. That was until hordes of them were driven from their home by the apex Seregios we faced. Being forced into foreign territories gave them no choice but to compete with anything they could to carve out a home for themselves. And given their already hostile nature, nothing was safe. One monster that the Seregios will attack on sight is the Rathalos. Over time, these two have become bitter rivals and will not tolerate the other at all. Whether on land or in the sky, only one of them is leaving alive. When hunting these monsters, be prepared. They are one of the most agile and aggressive flying wyverns, and their fighting style reflects this. Any attack they land is more than enough to inflict a grievous injury upon you and cause you to bleed profusely. Now, any movement you make will speed up the process of you bleeding to death, so tend to the wounds quickly. They can control and contract their scales to flare them up to become more intimidating before they fight, and even launch them through the air with a surprising level of accuracy. Thankfully though, their weapons and armor are well worth the risk of fighting these psychopathic wyverns, having a unique ability to sharpen your weapons by just rolling around. Also, fun fact for any who don't know, before the game was officially released, a fan asked what the name of the flagship monster was, and Yuri, the Capcom community manager, simply said his name was Steve. No, I'm not kidding. Steve. The Seregios is such a unique and awesome monster and one of the best flying wyverns in my opinion. He really deserves to appear in more games than he has, so possible future update for Wilds, Capcom? Please? I'm sure more than a few of you noticed in the Tetsucabra video that I highlighted a few animals that I am just grateful for the fact that they are just much smaller than us. One of them was the owl, and honestly that's an easy top 3. So many aspects of these animals are as grateful and beautiful as they are deadly and honed to perfection. So naturally, designing a monster based on one of nature's most specialized and deadly predators was a complete no-brainer. And so Capcom gave us the Nocturnal Enchanter, and by far the best bird wyvern, the Malfestio. The Malfestio is just gorgeous in so many aspects. Its combination of deep blue and golden feathers in combination with those piercing red eyes is just a stellar design. Design-wise, Capcom went with the Eurasian eagle owl as a core design inspiration, and can I just say that was a perfect choice. An interesting difference, however, is that those are its actual ears, whereas on its real-life counterpart, they're mainly used for intimidation. The Malfestio has many of the owl's key adaptations, such as the ability to swivel its head, which, fun fact, can rotate up to 270 degrees before they begin to strain the blood vessels in their necks. Most concerningly though is that despite their large size, they fly near silently, making them incredible ambush predators. They accomplish this thanks to their feathers. These long, soft feathers reduce any noise made when flapping through the air. These adaptations alone would be more than frightening, especially when you consider they stand at an average of 10 feet tall and could swoop cattle off the ground like it's nothing. But given their appearance is often compared to magicians, they have a few tricks up their sleeves, one being very literally up its sleeve as it has a set of blades sheathed in their wings similar to the Nargacuga. The golden plumage on their torso is covered in a hallucinogenic pollen that when dispersed will completely disorient and confuse their prey, leaving them wide open to attack. Finally, their wings can generate sonic waves that carry a sleep-inducing powder across a very wide area. Now, a tip for melee hunters out there is that these monsters will only rest in the trees high above the ground, so a couple of bouncing bombs wouldn't go amiss. Another cool detail is that clothes made from the Malfestio are used by both jesters and magicians to entertain the masses, and even the occasional masquerade ball. The Malfestio is an elegant, deadly, and overall gorgeous monster, and I love it dearly. The opening of any media is a crucial window. It allows you to set a tone or convey anything that your watchers or players should expect as they begin their new journeys. This makes it a step that should truly not be taken lightly. With that being said, I can safely say that one of my favorite introductions is found in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. You find yourself sailing through the desert, the sun beaming down on both you and what few crew members are aboard. A gentleman clad in red begins instructing you all on where you're headed and what journeys yet await you there. You then see a flock of Remobra flying overhead. These scavengers are a subtle warning to any experienced hunter that something much bigger is nearby. And to any of you that have been in a similar location before, you may have had a feeling like I did. Without warning, a massive creature leaps entirely over the ship and begins its assault. And that creature is none other than the Dahren Mohran. I said before that the Gen Mohran is the second best sand whale out there, and with the pool being upsettingly shallow, the only other option for best was this creature, and I stand by that. This titanic elder dragon bears the title of living battleship, and he lives up to the name beautifully. They are very similar to their cousins in a number of ways. One of the most prudent is that they also swim through the sand, filtering out any minerals or small organisms to consume. An obvious difference though is where the Gen Mohran has a set of twin tusks at the front, the Dahren Mohran has a single horn that it uses like a drill when swimming through the sand. Having a weapon like that is already scary enough, but add in the fact that they are much more aggressive animals that will attack ships completely unprovoked, and even attempt to attack cities like Valhabar without warning. As expected with a creature of this size, you will mainly be relying on cannons, ballistae, and the Dragonator to bring one of these titans down, as fighting them directly is saved for when they are truly on their last legs. Just like before, your ship is armed with a gong that can stun them due to their sensitive hearing, giving you a chance to climb up on their backs to either mine rare materials or do some real damage to them. They do have a trick to hinder your progress though. Using the blowhole on their backs, they can launch large stones at you. These are already problematic enough, but larger ones can stop you from using the weapons aboard a ship. They will crumble in time, but this can cause you many problems if you're not aware of it. Despite the danger these monsters present, hunters will gather from all over to get even the chance at fighting these beasts at the Prosperity Festival. To even get the chance, you must prove yourself through various quests organized by the guild. Fail even one of them, and there goes your chance until next time. A quick fun fact is that weapons made from them get their names from Japanese mythology, such as Susanoo, the god of storms, Amaterasu, goddess of the sun, and even the legendary sword Ame no Habakiri, or the feathery cutter of heaven. God, what a name. The Dahren Mohran may be to many a simple reskin of the Gen Mohran, depending on when you started. But if any of these two get the chance to come back in modern titles, I hope it's this one. The 4th generation already had a phenomenal start with Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. The story, the characters, and the monsters are some of the best they've made to date. And it only got better with the next 2 games they would go on to release. And one of my absolute favorite aspects it brought to us is the legendary group of flagship monsters, the Fated 4. Each one of these monsters, in my opinion, is in a class all their own, and I love each of them dearly. And so for today, we'll start off with the bewitching dancer, the Mizutsune. The Mizutsune is an absolutely beautiful Leviathan-class monster. Its name translates to water fox, and while that is its core idea, they packed so many details into this monster, like the pink membranes looking like sakura petals, its white scales and slender frame tying in aspects of Japanese dragons. Foxes in Japanese mythology are well known for their incredible powers and mystical abilities, shown off by creatures like the Kitsune. And while the Mizu doesn't quite get Elder Dragon level power scaling like the Kirin, for example, although Tempered Mizu is pretty damn close if I do say so, its design is still excellent. For most of the time, Mizutsune aren't a threat at all, and they prefer to avoid fighting where they can. That is until the mating season starts, and the males will begin to fight anything with a pulse as they are flooded with testosterone. The term dancer in its title isn't just for show either, as they slide around when fighting, focusing on speed and evasion using their hooked claws to control their movement. This level of speed is then further amplified by their most unique adaptation. They secrete an oil-like substance from their scales that, when mixed with water and stirred around by their fur, will produce a thick, soapy substance and generate a massive amount of bubbles. These bubbles are their main line of attack and store a large amount of pressure within them that, when popped, act very similarly to grenades. But let's say you're lucky enough to be hit by one that doesn't quite pack that level of firepower, it will still cause more than a few problems for you. The bubble will cover you in that soapy foam and greatly impact your mobility. As you slip and slide all over the place, you're left wide open to attack. A trick to know in the field when hunting them is to observe the petal membranes on their bodies. These indicate the monster's level of strength and stamina. Pink is calm, red is enraged, and blue is weak and tired. Another thing to keep your eye on when fighting them is the color of the bubbles themselves. If they're green, they can heal you, And if they're red, they provide a nice damage buff. The weaponry you can make from the Mizutsune is also just exceptional, with the dual blades, the insect glaive, and the bow being my favorites among them. Fun fact for anyone who doesn't know, the armor of a Mizutsune is based on Japanese wedding attire and it looks phenomenal. The violet Mizutsune is an excellent rare species. The violet scales and black fur are a flawless combination. And also, can I just say, that music. The Mizutsune is a unique, elegant, and beautifully well-made monster, and Capcom absolutely knocked it out of the park. The Faded Four may all be intrinsically linked as flagships of the 4th generation, but trust me, they couldn't be any more different from one another. For one, each of them resides in a different class of monster, so there's absolutely no overlap. And while they are all immensely powerful creatures, they each shine in a way that makes them each memorable. The Mizutsune is an elegant dancer, the Gammoth is a stalwart guardian, the Glavenus is a stoic warrior, and the Astalos is a freaking sociopath. I know by now we have covered more than a few hyper-aggressive monsters, but the Astalos ranks high even among them. The Astalos will bully and kill anything it can just because it can. Even as they are dying, they will launch one final attack in an attempt to take you with them. While most flying wyverns are typically inspired by birds, mammalian predators, or a B-52 for example, the Astalos core design inspiration comes from the dragonfly, and that is both awesome and terrifying if you know even a slight amount of information about them. Like the dragonfly, the Astalos possesses some of the best dexterity, speed, and mobility when flying. Also, the membrane on their wings is very transparent and almost looks like glass. Because of this, it can refract light, making its wings look like stained glass windows, which is just stunning to look at. Their bodies are covered in an exoskeletal spiked carapace, further highlighting its insectoid design. Much like the Seregios, every moment of their lives is a fight for survival, as even when they first hatch, they are at risk of either being eaten by their parents, who may just be feeling a little snackish, or one of their siblings looking to get a head start. When hunting prey, they are adept fighters with their spiked wings and scissor-like tail, and these are already effective weapons, but they have something that's much more deadly. By vibrating their wings, head crest, and snapping their tails, it generates massive amounts of piezoelectricity. Each of these parts are designed to generate and store as much power as possible. When fully charged, each of these parts will glow bright green, which enables multiple new attacks, such as a large AoE blast from their tails, electrifying the spikes on their wings to hit much harder, and a freaking lightning blade from its head because badass! Each of these parts are all independently charged from each other, which when fully charged make them much more dangerous, yes, but much more vulnerable. I also want to put this out there as a PSA, because I have been on so many quests where allies have tried capturing them using shock traps, only to fully recharge them and get carted. It doesn't work, use pitfalls instead. I am begging you. The armor and weaponry made from this creature are also fantastic. Personal shout out to the hammer axe though, that one is amazing. The Astalos is a unique, menacing, and badass creature and is so much fun to fight. Also, his theme is pretty kick-ass. And honestly, Capcom, we could do with more insectoid-based monsters. What you have is already amazing, so please, I'd love to see more. One of the inspirations behind the Faded Four comes from the 4 Heavenly Kings, 4 powerful beings that oversee the 4 cardinal directions and protect humanity. This concept can be seen in many other religions, mythologies, and even media today. Things like the Elite Four from Pokemon are a great example of this, in portraying 4 powerful beings that stand in your way on your path to glory. By now, you've overcome the Dance of Bubbles and tamed the rebellious Thunder, but now you face a beast whose roar can shake the mountains themselves. She is the unshakable mountain god, and her name is the Gammoth. The Gammoth is a monumental member of the Fanged Beast class of monsters. Gammoth gets both her name and design from the prehistoric woolly mammoth. She has their characteristic thick fur and elongated tusks, making the Gammoth a true force of nature. These nomadic animals move through the frozen tundras in search of food, and once they have chosen a path, nothing is stopping them. When fully grown, next to nothing can contend with them, making them very passive as a result. But so dangerous are their tempers that many villages worship them as gods, hoping to placate their wrath. This is because when enraged, these animals become incredibly dangerous, which if you know anything about elephants today, makes total sense. When they fight, they will use their tusks to gore their opponents or throw chunks of ice at them, and even use their heads as battering rams. They can also rear up on their hind legs and bring all of that weight down to crush their opponents beneath them. Being this big, a fair weak point is to target their legs, but the Gammoth actually covers her feet in snowy armor, which you will have to break first before you can do any actual damage. Their most dangerous weapon by far, though, is their trunks. Due to having poor vision, they rely on their sense of smell to detect threats, and it's very perceptive. This trunk can blast chunks of ice and even create small blizzards. But much like elephants, this trunk is made of pure muscle and is very dexterous. It's strong enough to grab, crush, and throw larger wyverns like the Tigrex. Speaking of the Tigrex, Gammoth has such a deep-rooted hatred for these animals they will attack them on sight. This is because a juvenile Gammoth is very vulnerable. They even have white fur to blend into the snowy terrain. The Gammoth are very protective mothers, and being solitary creatures, they know numbers help. So in these times, they will often join herds of popo. The popo herds will protect the calf, and in exchange, the Gammoth will protect the herd. Also, in contrast to the Mizutsune, all Gammoth we have seen are females, and we only have these rough sketches as to what a male Gammoth could look like, and please, Capcom, let this happen one day, please. The armor and weaponry you can make from the Gammoth is also some of the best out there. The Greatsword and Hammer are my personal choices. Again, as is the pattern with the Fated 4, its music is also just fantastic. When it comes to the Gammoth, I have many things to say, but one of them being, look, Capcom, you did the impossible and are bringing back the Lagiacrus from the grave. So whatever it takes, I would love to see this beast get the rework she deserves, and I completely and wholeheartedly love this creature. The time has finally come. The time where I abandon any sense of subjective analysis and just let my inner child take the wheel. Each member of the Fated 4 all rank high among my personal favorites, but only one of them stands above all the rest. One of my top 3 favorite monsters of all time, the Scorching Blade. The Glavenus. The Glavenus core design inspiration comes from the Carnotaurus, having those signature pointed horns on their heads. Then if you mix in a suit of armor, give it a great sword, you get this absolute unit of a monster as a result. Early concept designs show that the Glavenus could have been more turtle-like, or even a flaming Tyrannosaurus Rex, and while each of these concepts are amazing, I do much prefer what we got in the end. The Glavenus are apex brute wyverns built for direct melee combat above all else. And while the Brachydios has slime grenades attached to his fists, and the Deviljho is made of muscle and teeth, the Glavenus has truly mastered the blade, and their weapon of choice is that greatsword tail. This weapon can be up to 2/3 of their entire body length, and it is a thing of beauty. They wield this weapon with extreme speed, precision, and devastating power. And also, if you wield a greatsword and you fight this monster, it's no longer just a hunt. It becomes an epic duel to the death. These blades are covered in highly flammable ore that can be ignited as they swing it in combat. But much like our own weapons, combat will dull even the sharpest blade. So the Glavenus has a rather unique way of fixing this. By gripping its tail in its mouth, it has a set of sharp fangs that will hone its edge as it is dragged and ripped backwards through its mouth. You can also tell how strong its attacks will be depending on the color, whether dull, sharpened, or ignited. Ignited attacks are the strongest by far, but the blade is much softer and easier to break. All of the excess soot and minerals shaved off of its tail are also stored in their throats. Here it acts like a furnace and melts it all down to create explosive fireballs. Hitting their throats while it burns can disrupt this process, causing it all to explode much earlier. This can heavily stun the Glavenus, leaving them wide open to attack. Being such an important part of them, the Glavenus will seek out and guard any high-quality ore it needs to maintain its blade, whether from ore-eating wyverns like the Gravios, or even each other. The Glavenus will never back down from a fight. They are always looking for a chance to improve their skills, like a true greatsword user. Their armor and weapons are also just fantastic, and also some of my favorites. That greatsword speaks for itself, as long as we ignore what happened in Iceborne.
Why doesn't mine look like that?
Speaking of Iceborne, it did give us its one subspecies in the form of the acidic Glavenus, which I do like its concept of using the acid to weaken your defenses before it attacks. And like it even needs to be said at this point, but that music. Also, earlier I mentioned concept art. Here's one of my boy freaking decapitating a Devil Joe. Yeah, the Glavenus is S+ tier, and he always will be. I have praised the creature design process of the Monster Hunter team to the moon and back, because each of these creatures do so many things so phenomenally well. And while each one is good, there are a few that reach such a high level of excellence that the only way I can describe some of them is just some of the best monster designs ever made. And today's monster is in fact one of them. It has many names: the Stalking Shadow, the Dark Eclipse, or simply the Gore Magala. The Gore Magala is a fantastic jewel in the crown of this series. Classed as a demi-elder, this monster is a walking extinction-level threat. The Gore Magala was the driving force behind what is deemed the best story in a Monster Hunter game. Reports of a virus that forces anything infected into a berserker rage has been spreading through the lands rapidly. Dubbed the Frenzy Virus, the guild put together an elite team to investigate and resolve this issue, but its source would prove too much even for these veterans, leaving it to you. Design-wise, the Gore Magala reminds me of H.R. Geiger's Xenomorph. Something alien yet familiar, but it feels villainous, like a creature draped in darkness, and the accents of purple and red stand out amid the black scales beautifully. The Gore Magala itself is completely blind, and despite how deadly the Frenzy Virus is to everything around them, they use it to see. Small hairs and scales detach from their bodies constantly, and how they interact with their environment allows Gore to paint a picture of its surroundings. When attached to living creatures, it reacts to their body heat, granting them thermal vision of their target. The longer they fight in one place, the clearer their senses become, allowing them to fight at their best. Two feelers will sprout from their heads. They unfurl their wing arms, and the air is choked black with their scales. These arms are strong enough to snap the spine of a Tigrex, and they are adept at using them. They can also cause pools of these frenzy scales to explode or launch blasts of them from their mouth. When fighting a Gore Magala, contracting the virus is inevitable, and should you succumb to it, you take more damage from any frenzy-based attacks, and you even lose your natural ability to heal. But if you embrace the frenzy and land enough attacks on its source, you'll gain a buff to your affinity. A key weak point is their feelers, as when broken they are forced back to their blinded state, so keep that in mind. They're also very intelligent animals and will even play dead if they need to. The armor and weapons made from a Gore Magala are all beautifully haunting, all highlighting this monster's grim but beautiful appearance. The Gore Magala is hands down one of Capcom's greatest creations and is an easy S+ tier, there's no doubt in that. It wasn't just an antagonist or a monster you needed to fight, it was your rival. Both of you have only gotten stronger on your journeys. But before it all comes to a close, both of you will face each other at your best, and something different, yet very familiar, awaits you at the top of Heaven's Mount. The core focus and gameplay loop of this series is to become stronger facing greater and greater challenges. But unlike other RPGs, your stats don't change, but instead it's your skills and experiences are what define your capabilities. And one of the aspects that made 4 Ultimate so great was the fact that you weren't the only one to learn from your experiences and come back stronger for it. After finally slaying the source of the Frenzy Virus, you would believe victory is yours. But while you have achieved your goal, the Gore Magala has done the same, rising from the darkness to become a divine dragon of the heavens, known simply as Shagaru Magala. Shagaru is named after the ancient mountain god of Cathar. The Shagaru is also the ancient heavenly wheel, in reference to the Dharma Chakra wheel of life. I bet at least a few of you have seen this before. Reaching this transformation is the sole focus of a young Gore Magala's life. Once they become strong enough, they will undergo a drastic and painful transformation. They expend large amounts of energy to molt their blackened scales, and if they're lucky enough, they will emerge from the darkness clad in iridescent golden scales. This transformation comes with many drastic changes, such as their feelers becoming solidified horns. Their eyes are now fully developed, and also they have much greater control of the Frenzy Virus that helped them survive up to this point. Its mastery has ascended so high that the black mist surrounding the sanctuary blocking out the sun is the Frenzy Virus. But like the monsters themselves, the virus also undergoes a change and is now also used for reproduction. Any monster that is unable to conquer the virus and succumb to it will be used to germinate the parasitic cells of a new Gore Magala. It will then feed on their frenzied corpses before emerging into the world. Despite how well the virus spreads, the success rate of creating a new Gore Magala is very slim. But the creation of a Shagaru is not just bad news for hunters. It's also a death sentence to any Gore Magala nearby. Their transformation requires total concentration, and any interruption or even the suppressive cells of Shagaru's evolved frenzy halts this metamorphosis. It then creates something neither one nor the other, but something much more chaotic. The Shagaru Magala has the aggression to match its new powers, rushing you down with a flurry of attacks from its much stronger wing arms, or creating exploding spirals of frenzy. But something you can use is now that its eyes are developed, they're susceptible to flash pods, so keep that in mind. Its armor may not be my personal favorite, but I appreciate its design so much. The weapons are also just gorgeous, all getting their names from aspects of divinity such as the apotheosis. Fighting the Shagaru Magala on top of the sanctuary is one of my favorite fights to date. Fighting a powerful Elder Dragon is nothing new to this series, but we formed a bond with that monster, and here we are to fight at our best. Both of us faced the challenges of this world and only got stronger for it, and in one final encounter, only one of us would walk away. It felt personal, and I loved it. An aspect of this series that I love more than anything are the stories the monsters tell. I'm not talking about the narrative that we follow. I'm talking about the hidden tales the monsters give us a mere glimpse of. Some tell a story of honor and hope. Some tell a warning that should never be forgotten. And others tell woeful tragedies. The overarching story of the Gore Magala can be summarized as the pursuit of divinity. This dragon has the potential to ascend to the heavens and shine brighter than all others. But as in all things, balance is essential, and such heights make the potential fall so much worse. And should a Gore Magala fail in its ascension, it will then fall to chaos. The Wandering Malformation. The Chaotic Gore Magala. This monster has so many layers of brilliance despite having so few differences to the base form. Chaotic Gore Magalas are created when another has beaten them to ascending to Shagaru Magala. This form grants them an evolved form of the Frenzy Virus, which can suppress others' ability to molt their scales. This is to simply eliminate any competition they would pose to them. This new virus only partially stops the process instead of preventing it entirely, which would be a mercy. Should they attempt molting when infected, this transformation will be incomplete, and the monster will be in constant, excruciating pain as its new form rejects the old. Both sides oppose each other on every level. It will even use its claws to scratch off and claw away at its scales to try and break free, but to no avail. It even has one eye glowing red beneath the gold. It's unclear whether it's developed enough for them to see out of, or it's just a gaping wound. This monster lives in constant agony and craves an end to it all, but its instincts compel it to live on. Such an internal struggle forces it on a rampage against anything in its path. Any hunter will tell you an injured creature is one of the most dangerous quarry you'll face, because they'll do anything to escape. Chaotic Magala may not be as strong as Shagaru, but it's much stronger than its base form. Its attacks are much more explosive and erratic. Its golden scales are weak to dragon, but the rest of it is weak to fire, so build around where you plan to attack. Its armor is also called the Chaos Nephilim, which to me really drives home its status as a fallen angel. The weapons are also just the best of the three, hands down. There is also a rule every hunter must follow. Never capture a Chaotic Magala. Grant it peace and end its suffering. The Chaotic Gore Magala does just enough to tell a complete story for the base form and connect it to Shagaru all at once, and all of this without a single word of dialogue, just through visuals and small text entries. I absolutely love everything there is to love about this monster, and I always will. Cathar is a land rich in culture and a truly eventful history. Many locations here hold so many stories and uncovered mysteries within them. The Heavens Mount is a standout to me even amongst this very impressive roster. Chunks of the mountain are suspended by an intricate network of roots and vines. How such a place even came into existence is only spoken of in old fairy tales. They speak of a serpent so massive that it carved through the stone as it wished, even sharpening its beak into a spear tip that threatens the heavens themselves. In this world, every legend always has a grain of truth to it, and well, this monster is more than a grain, and I now want to introduce you to the Serpent King Dragon, or the Dalamadur. This elder dragon was written off by the region of Cathar as an ancient myth, because any who did see it were so terrified that something like that could even exist,
and those that came afterwards simply didn't believe them. The Dalamadur we fight at the Speartip Crag isn't even fully grown. That one measures at around 440 meters, or 1,445 feet long. Anywhere this creature goes, the maps need to be redrawn, to such an extent that in the New World, the Rotten Vale in its entirety is built upon the bones of 2 long-dead Dalamadur. These 2 individuals are theorized to have measured around a mile long, and reached about 60 meters in diameter. Just, my god. Their bodies are covered in forward-facing spikes that slice and grip into stone, allowing them to climb up and through the earth. Given their size and weight, they cut through mountains like a chainsaw goes through a tree. But as if something this big needed anything else to ward off a threat, its tongue is coated in a toxin which can induce paralysis on contact. I truly dread to think what exactly this creature needs to paralyze to kill or ward off, but guess what? It also has enough firepower to reduce just about every other Elder Dragon to dust. For starters, it can summon meteors from the sky that explode on contact, but its main weapon is a concentrated blast of blue flame that might as well be a Kamehameha, as anything hit with it will truly no longer be a problem. This substance is incredibly dangerous even after the Dalamadur itself dies. The base of the Rotten Vale has large pools of it gathered together, which burns through even the strongest armor. When fighting them, you can scale them to hit particular weak points, like their heads, their back spikes, or the furnace organ in their chest to reduce their firepower. The Shah Dalamadur is one that has managed to successfully shed its skin, and as a result it's much more aggressive than their counterparts, as this process takes a toll on them. Its armor is also just fantastic, looking so vicious and sharp, but the weapons are also some of my personal favorites, as I'm sure many of you have seen. The Dalamadur is definitely in my top 10 favorite monsters ever made, and while I am definitely split on whether or not we will ever see him again, unlike many other monsters, it's at least possible. So far, many of the monsters have had areas in which we fight them that are equally as epic as the monster itself. We fight Fatalis in the remains of an ancient civilization that was burnt away in a single night, and the Dalamadur awaits us atop a mountain that has been sharpened to a deadly point. Each are fantastic, but to me, none match the atmosphere of Wyvern's End, a pit filled with the scattered remains of the innumerable victims that were unfortunate enough to be in sight of such a place's ruler, the corpse dragon, the Nakarkos. Wyvern's End is considered by many to be an accursed place in the Jurassic frontier, as any airship or research party that goes near such a place is neither heard from nor seen again. The reason why was unknown even to the Wycademy for years, until the Nakarkos was discovered. The most basic part of its design comes from the cuttlefish.
Cuttlefish.
With the extended tentacles of the giant squid. They disguise their long tentacles as dragon heads covered in bone, which they use to attack and divert away from its main body. They cover themselves with bone to make a protective shell. The substance they use even hardens the bones and prevents them from decomposing. Wyvern's End is connected directly to the sea via underground tunnels. Here it'll spend its time hunting both large leviathans and even juvenile Cedius. But so voracious are their appetites, they are not limited to hunting only in the waters. They will encase any victim they come across on land in the mucus. This will massively inhibit their ability to move, if not stopping it entirely. When this is done, they will simply drag it back to their dens, where that beak will crack through any shell they face. And trust me, there are very few things not on the menu for them. After hunting their prey, they will even learn from fighting them and use them as weapons against future opponents. Their roster includes the skull of a Glavenus, the chin hammer of an Uragaan, the electric spikes of Lagiacrus, and the skull of a Brachydios to use its slime for explosive attacks. Throwing a sonic bomb can dislodge these skulls, causing them to fall and do damage to its main body. Now, some of you might remember that I said this thing can also cause airships to disappear, and you may be wondering how. Well, this. Their bodies will continuously make dragon energy over time, and either as a final-ditch effort against a powerful opponent, or if an airship flies just that little bit too close, they will expel it. When fighting it, you can throw a tranq bomb in its mouth to negate this attack. I also just need to say how much I love the armor and weapons you can make from Nakarkos. They look so freaking cool. Conceptually, this monster is damn near flawless to me, but in execution you can tell it was sadly limited by the technology that it was made with. But if any monster could rival, if not surpass, the Fatalis level rework, if done correctly, I know it's this one. I remember when the trailer for the Oil Well Basin biome was revealed for the first time, and there were exactly 2 reactions to it. New fans and many others were thinking how cool the monsters looked, and the possibilities that such a place could contain. And then there were long-term players like myself thinking only, GOG is back, baby. And I saw more than a few comments wondering what the hell we were on about, and so for any of you who may not know of him, I would like to introduce you to the giant halberd dragon, the one true GOG himself, Gogmazios. The final boss of 4 Ultimate, and my god, what a finale. The city of Dundorma is well known for its fortifications against powerful elder dragons, but its most important creation was the ever-reliable Dragonator. But one night, the munition storehouse was raided and the weapon went missing. After a while, more were attacked, and then the Dragonator was found. It just so happened to be stuck to Gogmazios. Design-wise, Gogmazios is as simple a Toho-esque kaiju monster as it gets. Interestingly, it does have 2 fully articulate limbs that function identically to the Gore Magala's arms. Just, you know, like 10 times the size. Gogmazios invaded these settlements in search of food. And what does it eat, you may ask? Good question. It's sulfur, specifically what's found in coal and gunpowder. This diet has a rather unique side effect, as due to the amounts of carbon in its diet, they secrete the excess from their skin, and that excess comes out as oil. Much like tar, this oil is incredibly sticky, and any living or random objects that get too close to Gog either get stuck to him, or essentially get a day in the tar pit. When fighting Gogmazios, you should use all the tools available to you to bring him down. Except the ballistae, they're just not worth using. Using the Dragonator is a must, but you can also break off the original one off its back, and miraculously, it still works. When enraged, the oil spilling from their bodies will begin to combust, and oh yes, he'll start to fly. He's this big and can fly. Gogmazios also has a concentrated beam of fire that has a very large blast radius, so keep your eye out for that. The last tool you'll have at your disposal is the Big Bad Demolisher, which does insane damage to him. And pro tip, if you aggro him to the platform and time it right, you can hit him point blank with it. Being this large, Gogmazios spends most of its time hibernating underground, and only comes out when it's hungry enough. The weapons you can make from Gogmazios are so unique and beautifully well made, and you'd think they'd inflict fire or even dragon damage, but no, they inflict sleep, highlighting the fact that this creature spends most of its time hibernating. And the armor, my god, truly one of the best. Just look at it. Gogmazios is a monster you truly never forget. He is unique, fun to fight, and would do so well in a modern setting, that I am certain of. I had a bit of a dilemma before writing this one, because I wasn't exactly sure where to place the deviants, as I still consider these monsters to be the true final entries of the 4th generation, and given their strength, I couldn't just put them alongside their counterparts, so I'm just gonna do what's the most fun for me, and I'm gonna talk about each of them individually. The deviants are creatures in a class all their own. Accomplished hunters can hunt down elder dragons, but to tackle a deviant, you need special permission issued by the guild, showing that they believe you might be able to not just get instantly destroyed by these creatures. I'm gonna save a much more in-depth explanation into talking about deviants for a future project, but if you want to know right now, I recommend this video. Today's creature may be the very first we encounter, but do not make the mistake that weakness comes with his placement. The Crimson Bear, the Redhelm Arzuros. Redhelm really sets a good tone for what deviants have in store for us, in my opinion. Where normal Arzuros can be dangerous if provoked, many places aren't really concerned with them. Fishermen will even go where they are fishing because they know that's where the catching is good. Redhelm gets its name from the crimson mohawk that has appeared on its head. This is a common design trope used in many manga and anime. When someone is generally considered rebellious, a delinquent, or a punk, they are typically given mohawks to express this rebellious nature. Redhelm delivers on this, as they are leagues bigger and stronger than their counterparts by a frighteningly huge margin. What specifically causes this change within them is still unknown, but theories do abound. When rearing up on their back legs, they can stand at around 15 to 20 feet tall. And for all my visual learners out there, that's as tall as an average giraffe. Their strength is also only matched by their sheer belligerence.
Those arms will crush anything they grab within them. They even scatter fish from the water with every swing, so little is their regard for anything around them. Also, fun fact, they can also jump high into the air to bring all of that weight down on their target. A bear this big has a damn near 15-foot vertical leap. My god. Their armor also ties into that punk aesthetic with the red dyed hair woven into its design, and it looks excellent. And out of all the weapons you can make from it, the longsword Crimson Maw is my personal favorite. Redhelm is a decent introduction to the concept of what deviants are. They took an absolute pushover of a monster and made it legitimately threatening. Being the first, you can tell the dev team were cautious as not to overdo it, but part of me wishes so much that they did. This could have been so much scarier. A 15 to 20 foot bear rushing you down ruthlessly and belligerently with claws and swipes and grapples. It just could have been so much more. But for what it is, it's a nice flashy upgrade to the base form, and don't get me wrong, I do like him. I just wish they went so much harder. One of the simplest concepts on how a deviant works is making a much more flashier version than the original form. Now, there are plenty of deviants that have much more nuanced reasons for their new forms, but today's monster falls into the same camp as Redhelm, the Great Snowmaster, the Snowbaron Lagombi. 2 out of the 3 beast trio of monsters have deviants, and out of the 2 we have, I like Snowbaron the most, and there are 2 main reasons for that I will get into later. For starters, the design is really simple, having tufts of blackened fur across their bodies. It's theorized that these darkened streaks of fur indicate a specimen's level of dominance amongst its own kind, even though by virtue of being a deviant it's already much stronger than any member of its own species and even many others. In combat, the Snowbaron will make full use of its namesake. Regular Lagombi will mainly use their large bulky frames like battering rams sliding around on their bellies. The Snowbaron uses this tactic mainly for repositioning during combat, because when they're fighting, they will dig up and hurl varying sizes of snowballs at you. Whether one massive one or as many as 3 at once can be thrown with incredible force and can be very dangerous. There's even a confirmed case registered by the guild of a Snowbaron causing an avalanche and burying an entire village in snow. Many did not survive this event, and so the guild takes any mention of these animals very seriously. When fighting them, you can throw sonic bombs to disorient them due to their highly sensitive hearing, but if you time it just right while they're carrying a snowball, the shock to their senses will cause them to drop it right on top of them. Now, I said before that there are 2 main reasons why I prefer Snowbaron over Redhelm, and I wanted to save them for now. One reason is that the absolute legend Yasunori Ichinose wanted an excuse to make a version of Lagombi's armor in black, which is just so cool because he just liked the armor and it looks fantastic as a result. And the other reason I like them is because of their color palette. The main reason they went with this color choice is they wanted to make it look much more menacing, and their choice of inspiration for such a color palette were pandas. They took one look at this and said, can we make it scary? Just... Before learning this, Snowbaron got like a C+ at best, but just because of that design inspiration and reasoning, I'm bumping it to a B because that's just brilliant. When I originally took on the deviants, I made it a point to not look up anything about them because I wanted each one to be a surprise to me. Now, I couldn't avoid every spoiler just due to time and general spoilers, but I do remember being completely convinced that the 3rd deviant was going to be a Volvidon. Given what we had been given up to then, it seemed like a sure thing, but instead we got the monster known as the Crab Rampart, the Stonefist Hermitaur. The Stonefist is a solid middle-of-the-road deviant to me, and I want you all to realize I say that with great risk, as I know you're watching this one, Subpar Citrus. I do like him. Also, you guys should check him out, by the way. He makes great stuff. Stonefist truly embodies the aspect of a monster's final form to me. This monster could have been a rare species, and I honestly wouldn't even blink. They're primarily still based on hermit crabs, still using the skull of a monoblos as a shell, making this my boy's most recent appearance in any game.
Why are we still here?
Hey, if Seregios made it into Wilds after Capcom hearing my plea somehow, I'm holding out hope. But again, focus. Being a deviant, Stonefist has some unique features to help it stand out. On top of having a much darker shell with accents of black and purple, it has the characteristic enlarged claw of the fiddler crab. While the fiddler crab uses this claw mainly as a display to attract females, Stonefist has a much more tactical use for it. Its entire exoskeleton is much stronger and harder to break than its normal counterparts, causing many weapons to simply bounce off, and even bullets are often returned to sender. They use this claw for both offense and defense. Whether blocking, grabbing, or smashing, it can do it all. Hunting one of these beasts is a true test of patience, as you have to whittle down their defenses before you get the chance to do some real damage to them. When damaged enough, they will vent steam from their bodies, indicating an opportune time to strike. But if you do manage to slay one of them, you can create some pretty decent weapons. And also, I'm a big fan of its armor. And many can say I'm wrong, but I don't really care. They remind me of an NFL linebacker and cheerleader when put together. Why they chose this aesthetic? I have no idea, but I am a big fan of these designs. Stonefist is the final blockade before getting into what I consider the real metal testers, where the monsters will become much more complex and even more daunting to fight. Conquering a deviant is no small feat, but the further you go, you can really see the gap in strength between each of them. This isn't really a knock against Stonefist, as I do still enjoy him, but I can't really ignore it when ranking him either. In my last video, I mentioned that I believe Stonefist Hermitaur is the final hurdle before you start meeting monsters that will really begin to test you. All deviants are monsters that are adept at killing hunters, and how they do it is as unique to them as they are numerous. Today's beast goes by the name the Poison Princess, the Dreadqueen Rathian. Dreadqueen Rathian is a fantastic upgrade to the base form. Where Gold Rathian is known for her flames that burn like hellfire, Dreadqueen is a master of her venom. This poison is not just enhanced to be more deadly in its own right. The poisonous barbs on her tail have undergone some kind of mutation or change that has caused it to produce so much poison that it's practically overflowing. The spines on a Rathian's tail were already something you would do well to avoid in combat, but Dreadqueen, they are that much deadlier. So much so that the poison is deadly enough that it was recategorized as fatal poison. Even those with charms and armor sets to negate the effects of normal poison damage can only slow this kind down but not stop it entirely. Being such a potent weapon, Dreadqueen makes full use of it in combat with more attacks using her tail. With every swing, she leaves these sharp spines jutting out of the ground, leaking poison and noxious gas to fill the air and control a much wider area. Her fireballs are also much more explosive, covering more ground with every blast. Being such a core part of her offense, it makes this weapon a critical weak point if you have the skills to make it so. Breaking these spines will drastically weaken the effect of her poison, and even more so if you can cut the tail off. This won't stop the toxic attacks as the poison will still flow from her body, but it will slow its frequency. So much so that purple hue you may have noticed in her scales isn't just decoration. The poison in her body has seeped and embedded itself so deeply that they are toxic even to the touch. Only the most well-trained blacksmiths will handle the scales of a Dreadqueen. And from these parts you can make one of my personal top 10 armor sets in the game. The accents of purple in this armor look stunning, and check out this cosplay, it's so freaking well made. And the weapons follow this trend of being a simple aesthetic change to the base form, but they look amazing. Dreadqueen proves the potential that lies in Rathian's base design to me. Whether simple, flashy, or badass changes, the Rathian is a well-made monster, and the Dreadqueen is my personal favorite version of her. Something that I probably should have clarified earlier in this series is that while each of the deviants will absolutely put you in your place, there is a hierarchy amongst them, and quite frankly towards the end it just gets ludicrous in my opinion. If you know, you know, and if you don't, you will. With Dreadqueen marking the start of what are generally considered the higher rank deviants, every monster from here on is going to highlight the cosmic gap in threat, power, and ferocities deviants possess compared to any other monster, with some exceptions. Today's monster is the Oni Frog, Drilltusk Tetsucabra. The big old demon toad really got himself an upgrade, huh? Drilltusk is a very funny execution of the deviant formula to me. Dreadqueen got much deadlier poison and fireballs that explode. Drilltusk just took every aspect of the base Tetsucabra and kept turning that dial until we got this absolute titan of a toad. An initially subtle change that many people, including myself, didn't notice straight away is that where the normal scales of a Tetsucabra are said to be akin to hardened rubber and very good for defensive strategies, Drilltusk has spikes all over its body. Why? No idea, but they have them. Now, a not so subtle change I am certain many of you caught straight away are those titanic tusks. These tusks have grown so much bigger and stronger than those of either of their counterparts. They use them to gore opponents and prey alike, but their signature move is to tear stones right out of the earth and use them as weapons. Whether making a boulder shield to block attacks, or wielding them in their mouths, which I mentioned in the older video that they are strong enough to crush these rocks to dust. They also have some truly unprecedented leaping abilities. They take a much lowered stance and literally charge up their legs. They then leap high into the air with a surprising amount of grace, and then plummet straight back down to body slam their targets. And out of all the ways you want to meet your end in this world, being a red stain on the stomach of a Drilltusk is just not how anyone wants their story to end. But once you have beaten them, you get to craft these. Both of these armor sets are just gorgeous. The color, the styling, it's just sensational. Truly one of the best and one of my personal favorites. The weapons also tie in many Japanese aesthetics and they look fantastic. But my personal favorite is the Demon Knife Greatsword. Just look at it. Now, some of you may have been waiting to hear what this monster's real wow factor is. I mean, it has a subspecies that launches explosive boulders instead of regular ones, but Drilltusk really doesn't need any of that. He just maxed the dial on every aspect of normal Tetsucabra and became the best toad he could be. And to me, that's honestly all he needs. And also before I go, can we please just get base Tetsucabra in Stories 3, Capcom? Please. It was criminal having him in 2 and not being an option. Please. Back when I was playing through Generations Ultimate, I did my damnedest to steer clear of any late game spoilers. And for the most part, I did pretty well, as I had made it pretty far before I had actually even learned about the deviants. But there were a few I had heard about just from friends at the time. Mainly 2. Each one of these 2 produced a rather contrasting reaction. The first one was a sense of fear at the idea that they supercharged a monster that made a career of kicking my ass in older games. And that monster is the wind-cutting white shadow, the Silverwind Nargacuga. The fear that hit me when I found out that this beast existed still makes me laugh even today. Back in Tri-Ultimate, Nargacuga was certainly a wall for me, at least for a while. While I did learn to fight them in later games and in earlier, and now I have little problem with them, the market left in those days is certainly remembered. So when I had heard that this beast had a spot on the Deviants list, a lot of those flashbacks came rolling back. Silverwind Nargacuga are said to form as a result of a Nargacuga living long past what is considered old age for a standard specimen. Dear God, what routine is this guy on? But do not let that fool you into thinking that this is just an OAP. Yeah, I'm not proud of it either. Silverwind loses none of its mobility over time and is easily able to keep up with those much younger than itself and even surpass them. Those streaks of white fur are seen as a way to establish dominance over any member of its species. Part of what allows them to keep their agility even at this age is that the blades on their wings and the spikes on their tail are much lighter, yet just as strong as what they were when they were younger. Having spent their lives mastering these weapons, they have learned to more accurately aim and direct the spikes when launching them. Oh, and just for fun, they can swing their tails at such a speed it creates gales of wind that move so fast that they can cut down trees and you in half. I mean, here's a journal entry to prove my point. The Silverwind summons a gale that slices. The careless fool is unaware, until his head falls cleanly from his shoulders. An image that vivid of wind that moves that fast it slices clean through you just makes me think of a Rasen Shuriken, and I've called it that to this day, and I don't plan on changing. The armor also goes so hard. Not my personal favorite aesthetic type, but one I will always craft out of respect for how good the base design is, and they enhanced it just enough in this version. The weapons are also great. I love the color scheme and again upgrading classics without changing them too much. But the dual blades Daybreak Claws are a show stealer in my opinion. The Silverwind does absolutely everything it should as a deviant. It already had a great base form with Nargacuga being a fantastic monster in its own right, and with just the right level of enhancement and tuning, we got a fantastic result in my opinion. In my last video, I mentioned that there were 2 deviants I had learned about before actually getting to them, and each one produced very contrasting reactions. While one resurfaced an old fear, the other amounted to little more than a regrettable sigh. that a slot on such a list went to a monster that I do like design-wise, but I just don't like fighting them. God, I'm just really starting to feel mean at this point, especially since last I checked, the Uragaan short that I made is in my top 5 most popular on YouTube. But I've sworn to give every monster a fair swing, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. So today we're looking at the treasure-clad wyvern, Crystalbeard Uragaan. Now I'm just gonna come right out the gate and break any level of suspense. This is what base Uragaan should have been. To elaborate, while Crystalbeard's changes are incredibly minimal compared to other deviants, what they did give them, I enjoy more than the base form. It's not much, and for such minute reasons, it enhances this monster in my eyes, and I wish that it was the base form. Crystalbeard gets its name from the various ore that has been embedded into them, making these creatures a walking retirement fund. Many less than experienced hunters and treasure seekers attempted to either slay this creature or find where it resides to claim the bounty that it hoards. This has forced these animals to become stronger through constantly needing to defend themselves. Through such repeated and intense ordeals, their signature attack, the Chin Hammer, can cause a much larger area to become affected by tremors. Also, those shiny chunks of ore aren't just for decoration. During combat, they get dislodged, and when they do, they present you with a couple of options. They can either burst with a sleep-inducing gas, and then explode, be mined for valuable chunks of treasure, and then explode, or just explode. Just like the base form though, when it rolls around, unless you're a one-man bulwark, you just need to get out of the way. But if you do slay this beast, the gear you can craft from them is okay. Visually, at least, I can say it's my favorite amongst it and its counterparts, even if the skills are less than stellar, let's be honest. But its hammer and the heavy bowgun are my personal favorite weapons to make out of them. Crystalbeard, in my opinion, is the weakest execution of the deviant formula in my opinion, in terms of wow factor and many other reasons. But if it were a simple subspecies or even the base form, honestly, it would rank much higher. I will put him a bit higher than base Uragaan entirely for these small reasons that I've mentioned, but he's not climbing much higher anytime soon. The term runt of the litter is a phrase often used in various stories as shorthand for an underdog type character. Born the smallest, they are often underestimated or brushed aside by many, forcing them to prove their abilities to those who would doubt them. This phrase has always been particularly funny to me, in how much these kinds of stories completely miss the mark of what reality often demonstrates. To anyone with a background working with animals, having multiple younger siblings, or both, you know that it's the small ones you need to be wary of, and today's monster embodies that notion terrifyingly well. The dreaded one-eyed wyvern, Deadeye Yian-Garuga. Deadeye Yian-Garuga is such a wildcard deviant to me. Any member of the Yian-Garuga family tree are rightly considered genuine menaces to anything around them, fighting just for the hell of it and truly not knowing the meaning of the word retreat. But in comparison, Deadeye Yian-Garuga are true 10th rank prestige veterans fighting solely for the love of the game.
Let's do this.
Deadeye Yian-Garuga are notably much smaller than their counterparts. The theory behind this change is dwarfism, but do not think for even a second that that gives you the advantage. These animals fight from the moment they hatch, needing to carve out every inch of ground they can just to survive. And when you add in the already hostile and aggressive instincts innate to this species, it's little wonder why you only see them covered in countless battle scars. Their singular remaining eye burns bright red, with a will to survive and dominate that would make most elder dragons pause. Their smaller frames afford them much greater speed, and when attacking they will brace themselves briefly before launching their entire bodies recklessly at you. And also, instead of merely pecking the ground to try and skewer you, they will just smash their faces clean into the soil to make sure any hit they land is a fatal one. Looks like they've been taking lessons from Devil Joe. Their signature poison and fire attacks have been greatly upgraded, similar to Dreadqueen, in that the fireballs now explode and that their poison has been categorized as deadly poison, making it one of the strongest. Let's say you manage to get through all of this and manage to actually slay one of these creatures.
The rewards are just fantastic. The armor looks amazing, reminding me of Lu Bu's armor and the style of weaponry, and the weapons match this level of excellence, with my personal favorites being the Daito Calamity Longsword and the Incessant Calamity Lance. Although admittedly, I am a bit upset that there's no Sky Piercer Insect Glaive, because that would have just been perfect. Deadeye Yian-Garuga is a simple design, but one done really well within the context of the base creature. The fight is suitably daunting at first, and overall, this Nightmare Chicken absolutely deserved his spot on a deviant list. Something I briefly mentioned in a previous video is that before being driven from their mountain home by the Amatsu, Zinogre were seen as guardians of the valley that they inhabit. Because of this, they were even revered by the people that call such a place home. And seeing these beasts that call the power of lightning itself, even of various types, it's not really hard to see why you would worship creatures like this. And it may be hard to imagine that even among beasts like this, there is one that stands above them all, and to whom they all must answer. As Zinogre's true awakening, and the king of the Thunderwolves, Thunderlord Zinogre. Zinogre himself already has a decent number of variations on its core design, but Thunderlord is an example of when you over-design in a great way. Thunderlord Zinogre was believed to be merely a legend, as many accounts describe them as wearing a robe of golden lightning. This robe is their golden fur, which sparks constantly with bolts of electricity. This is because where a regular Zinogre needs time and energy to enter what is referred to as a supercharged state, Thunderlord is always supercharged. Visually, this helps them stand out much more. That singular extended horn, the emerald scales, and literal Super Saiyan golden hair is such a well-blended combination. The Fulgurbugs themselves have also undergone a change. They themselves can now generate so much more power that it even lingers on the ground like a landmine, and any new strength that they gain, so does their host. A supercharged Zinogre is already bad enough to deal with, as they mainly rely on the agility and lightning they get from this state. But now imagine a creature that starts at that level and can go even further beyond. By taking a lowered stance, they call upon even more Fulgurbugs to generate more power. When enough has been generated, they enter what is dubbed the ultra-charged state. But interestingly, all of this extra power comes at the cost of their well-known speed. The trade-off, though, is much stronger attacks empowered by golden lightning, and their defenses skyrocket. Such a switch-up can catch many hunters off guard when fighting them, so be ready to adapt accordingly. But just like their cousins, they can't maintain such power infinitely, and eventually will be forced to discard the Thunderbugs. You can speed this up by either catching them in a net, or doing enough damage to the beast itself. Felling one of these creatures is no small feat, and doing so will earn you some pretty solid gear. The armor visually reminds me of the thunder god Raijin, bearing the same extended hair and twin horns. Personally, I would have liked to have seen the drum ring on its back worked in somehow, but hey, you can't have everything. The weapons are also really well made, and personally, I tend to pick the Raiden hammer when making gear from him. The Thunderlord is a simple but well executed monster, and while I do still really like Stygian, Thunderlord is my favorite among the pack. One of my favorite things about the Deviants as a whole is the level of complexity, or complete lack thereof, the designers gave each monster when designing them. Don't get me wrong, I love it when Capcom gives the monsters their own stories that we can further expand upon via our own interactions. But I also love when they stay true to a monster's beautiful simplicity, as is the case with today's monster, the Roaring Wyvern, Grimclaw Tigrex. Grimclaw Tigrex is a simple execution of taking a cool thing and making it even cooler. Not the only one, but a fantastically well-made one. Grimclaw is the equivalent of getting your first car. It starts off simple and fit for purpose, but eventually, most people will start to kit it out. Bigger engine, spoilers, and flames on the side, because we know that that does in fact make your car faster. Prove me wrong. Just by virtue of being a deviant, when compared to a normal Tigrex, a Grimclaw is already much harder, better, faster, stronger. But this beast takes that strength to a level that no basic Tigrex could ever achieve, regardless of the regiment it starts. This new level of power comes from their incredibly powerful heart and circulatory systems. Their heart is akin to a supercharged engine, allowing them to circulate oxygen and energy-rich blood throughout their bodies, and for something that relies on raw physical power, that is quite literally an overpowered ability. I mean, one of my favorite mangas, Kengan Ashura, the main character's signature ability is quite literally doing that, and it's awesome. But also, if you really like fighting or martial arts, consider this a recommendation. Their circulatory system also allowed their forelimbs to develop even stronger, hence earning their name of Grimclaw. And now, just about everything you expect from a normal Tigrex, Grimclaw amplifies. They rip and throw massive boulders right out of the ground. Their roar, which they can do back to back by the way, can kill many smaller threats just with the force of sound alone. They also hit the ground with enough force that once the tremors settle, the stone beneath you literally explodes. But should you meet its match and overpower them, the rewards from such a beast are equally fantastic. Their armor is easily my favorite amongst the Tigrex species. The blue segments again just look badass. Also, the weapons work so damn well. My personal choices being the Grimclaw Howl Heavy Bowgun and the Jawblade Greatsword is just a classic. I said before that I think Tigrex is a monster based solely on the rule of cool, and something that a child came up with when you asked them what's the coolest thing ever. And Grimclaw follows that trend, resulting in a monster that I can only call badass. Since the debut of Predator Badlands earlier this month, I have been on a binge of anything to do with the Yautja. I have loved the concept of these beings since I was a kid, and clearly so did someone at Capcom, because they asked what happens if you fuse one of fiction's most apex hunters with one of nature's most apex hunters. Well, today's monster answers that. The Twilight Juggler, Nightcloak Malfestio. Nightcloak Malfestio tells a simple story, even in that a creature this deadly needs to be careful in a world filled to the brim with danger. Nightcloak came about not as a freak mutation like Thunderlord or Grimclaw, but out of survival. Normally, Malfestio are not preyed upon as they themselves are too dangerous and risky to even try hunting them, as the hallucinogenic powder they're covered in does more than enough to keep them safe. But not all environments are made equally, and an apex in one land is little more than food in another. And so to survive, certain specimens had to develop their own secret of survival in a very nasty world. They possess all the usual strengths and abilities of a regular Malfestio, only expectedly amplified. But the real trick is hidden in their wings. On top of being just beautiful, that deep red looks fantastic and is an excellent warning against predators, but the wings also have much more feathers within them. This not only helps with flying deathly silently, but within them are also unique clear scales. These scales refract light, and by using their wings they can cover their bodies in them, and they become nearly perfectly invisible, truly embodying the ever-classic phrase, "Now you see me, now you don't." To many predators, literally seeing your target disappear into thin air is already disorienting enough. But in that confusion is exactly where Nightcloak prefers to strike, and does so with surgical precision. Such a technique is very impressive, but it isn't perfect. Due to the fact that these scales refract light, it means that any change in light can temporarily break the illusion, even if briefly. But if you're struggling when fighting them, aim for their heads. After enough damage, their coordination and balance is simply thrown off, making their stealth tactics much less effective. Also, they definitely took some lessons from Chameleos, as their hand-shaped tails can swipe items away from you. There's definitely gotta be some magpie in the genes there. But if you manage to bring down one of these creatures, you can cast some magic of your own with some truly beautiful armor. Just look at it. The weapons are also fantastic. The Cloaked Dream Sleeper Greatsword and Cloaked Fan Sword and Shield are my personal favorites among them. Nightcloak Malfestio is hands down my favorite bird wyvern of the entire roster. It's a simple but well-made upgrade to a monster that I already loved, so I have no complaints here. One idea that I absolutely love about these games as a whole is that regardless of the amount of time and skill you possess, we all have certain monsters that we have our own particular struggles with. I mean, some are more universal, that's for sure, but for me, when fighting deviants, there are two in particular that I can fight and have beaten plenty of times, but the tension never leaves and it's always a risk that I'm going to faint at least once. Today's monster is one of them, the Iron Slashing Sickle, Rustrazor Ceannataur. Rustrazor, in my opinion, is such a genuinely clever concept when compared to what I imagine most, including myself, would have assumed when we heard both crabs got a deviant form. Given that Shogun is best known for using multiple types of skulls when fighting, my prediction was that they would just give him even more, similar to Nakarkos the way it uses monster parts in combat. And I was only half right. It still uses the skull of a Gravios, which they use to shoot jets of not water at enemies, but they swapped out the other for, of all things, a Glavenus. This confused me to no end at first, but then I fought it, and it caught me totally off guard. They're already much bigger and stronger than their counterparts, but when I saw them sharpen their claws in the Glavenus's mouth to reveal a pair of deadly sharp blades, I paused in disbelief for a second, which is all the time it needed to cut my character clean in half. These blades can cut through just about anything when sharpened. Various types of ore attaches itself to the blades when ripped through its mouth. I also really like that they become the same color. I remember describing fighting this creature as akin to fighting a dual blade user wielding two longswords, and to this day I think that statement holds up. They even mimic the Glavenus' signature tail spin move. You can tell they're about to do it when you hear this sound. So either get out of the way or make peace. Your best time to attack is when the ore on their claws begins to rust. This forces them back to using the skull of a Gravios, where they mainly focus on ranged attacks of, again, not water. They'll swap back again, but make the most of the time. Fighting them is challenging and fun, don't get me wrong, but it's not one I do too often, as the gear you get from him is just... I don't like it design-wise. Stonefist's armor and weapons at least had a unique theme to them, but Rustrazor doesn't carry over any real part of its unique new features. Maybe some in the weapons, but that's it. The main ones I use being the Rustrazor Cleaver Greatsword and the Rustrazor Render because it has a Daimyo Claw as a shield, which I really like. Rustrazor is a monster that I do enjoy fighting, despite how often it has beaten me. But other than when I'm helping friends get past him, I don't really think of him. And it's mainly his deviant gimmick that gets him this rank, because even compared to his base form, I only really fight them when I need to. During our time talking about the deviants, I have been speaking about them from a pseudo-subjective point of view, but I realized that I haven't clarified which among them are my own personal favorites. And while I'm certain many of you could guess at least one of my top 3 favorite deviants, one of them may surprise you. The Black Flame King, Dreadking Rathalos. Not a single soul was surprised to see this beast got a slot on the deviant list, and while its changes couldn't be any simpler, it just works for me. Its much darker color palette with the crimson scales, darker spikes, and golden flame pattern in its wings works just so well. Dreadking is a true king among kings, standing tall with some of the strongest versions our glorious mascot has gotten over the years. A Dreadking Rathalos, on top of having one of the coolest names for a deviant, is best described as Rathalos Plus, as it possesses all of the amplified strengths one would expect of a Rathalos deviant, but notably discards all of its weaknesses. But what sets them apart and makes them even more of a nightmare for hunters is that they stay true to their favorite strategy of always being in the air and raining fire down upon you. Here's why that sucks even more. First off is that their fireballs have been replaced with what are essentially lava balls. Sounding scary enough, especially if you've seen Elden Ring's magma damage, just god that's broken. But no, when this ball of lava lands and comes into contact with the air, it lingers for a moment, and I have seen more than my fair share of hunters standing right next to it thinking they got lucky and it just missed, only to then reenact that scene from Terminator 2 once it explodes in a massive area. Now, some of you might be jumping straight to that comment section to say, well, just flash bomb them out of the sky and hit them while they're on the ground. Yeah, that doesn't work. Somehow they have gained an immunity to flash bombs, and the only way to make that work is to first break their wings. So all of my melee hunters out there really need to make the most of the time when he lands. Felling one of these wyverns is a serious undertaking, but well worth it, because you get to make one of my favorite armor sets in the game. It's an easy top 10. The weapons are also great, keeping the changes simple but very effective to show that they came from Dreadking. My personal picks are the Dark Flame Lord Greatsword and the Firewalt's Edge Sword and Shield.
Dreadking has been my favorite Rathalos version for a very long time, but that was cemented in my first playthrough of Stories 2. I found one in a random den, and since then, he hasn't let me down when I needed him. And if you're curious, I named him Dante. Deviants can come around as a result of 3 typical incidents: freak genetic mutations, adapting to new environments, or a chance encounter that left its mark on them. And today's monster falls into the 3rd category, the Heavenly Eye, Soulseer Mizutsune. Soulseer Mizutsune is a flawless execution of redirecting the grace of its base form into something brutal and tragic. A Soulseer comes about when a Mizutsune loses its sight, whether by a hunter who was able to wound it but not slay it, or their rival Zinogre being an equally viable culprit. Losing such an important ability forces their other senses into overdrive. Their sense of hearing becomes so much sharper, and in combination with the petal membranes on their body, they have developed an amazing tactic to survive. They constantly create a network of bubbles acting similar to a spider web. They even do this when they sleep. They see via the sound waves caused by the bubbles being popped by intruders, making them essentially a Leviathan daredevil. Due to being so vulnerable most of the time, these creatures are ready to go all out on the offensive as soon as they sense anything unfamiliar to them. And even when you wake them up, they go straight into their enraged state. The blood rushing to their fins turns them a deep red, and in a haunting but beautiful way, their increased body heat causes blue foam around the scars on their eyes to burn and evaporate. During combat, if you get covered with the soapy foam, they can lock onto your location and will attack relentlessly, even using their newest weapon. Due to their affliction, they're forced to eat the much simpler to catch burst arowana. But this diet has had a rather interesting side effect. By mixing their volatile chemicals with their own, they're able to create flaming explosive bubbles which pack a hell of a punch. Getting past all of its newfound strength and explosive weaponry is not easy, but once done, the rewards speak for themselves, shying away from the wedding attire of before to something more akin to a fox demon, and it looks great. Their weapons are still as gorgeous as ever, now with a much deeper red to them. And just as before, the dual blades, insect glaive, and bow are still my favorite. The Faded Four are all just that good, that despite them being the newest entries to the series at the time, they each got a deviant form, and each is amazing, and the Soulseer kicks things off beautifully. Some of you may remember that back in the Rustrazor video, I said that there were 2 deviants, that no matter how often I fight them, I can rarely get a perfect victory against them. Well, today's monster is the other one, Lightning's Revolt, Boltreaver Astalos. Boltreaver for me is up there with some of the most daunting and intimidating beasts the guild expects us to fight. Not all Astalos either learn or are built to handle the electricity that their bodies can generate, and so as they age, they either learn to fine-tune how they harness it, or dispel it when it's not needed. But some specimens will form abnormal electrical organs, which can produce so much more power that they're used to handling, and not all will survive these initial phases. These specialized organs produce so much more power that they are forced to develop the strength they need to survive and master this newfound strength. Boltreaver are similar to Thunderlord, in that their default state is already fully charged, which makes things exactly as difficult as it sounds. And just like Thunderlord, they can take things to an even higher level of making your day that much worse. When enraged, they enter what is referred to as the Boltreaver state, which changes their lightning from its signature green to a bright azure blue. And in this state, they gain all the expected upgrades. Their claws hit much harder, and their ranged attacks fly much faster. But then they gain access to some truly destructive abilities. By channeling power into its head crest, it can create a freaking lightning blade, which is rumored to reduce anyone hit by it to little more than a shadow. And just for fun, by concentrating its power into a sphere, they can create what can only be described as a freaking black hole. Through harnessing electromagnetism, they create a focused point of gravitational force. How they do this? No idea. But it's rumored that they adapted this mastery to aid them when flying
due to their increased size and weight. Such an output of power takes its toll on them, and if you can somehow survive this onslaught of attacks, they'll be forced back to their default state. Now, killing these beasts will test you to within an inch of your life, but the rewards are well worth it. Even if the armor is my least favorite of the four, it's still great. And the weapons are again a very simple change, but it works for them. Shout out again to the Zephyra Beater Axe Hammer, that is amazing. This monster is one that despite how often I fight it, they will always find a way to catch me off guard. But having a beast like this as a rival isn't bad at all in my eyes. Looking back at my initial playthrough of Generations Ultimate, of all the Fated 4 deviants, only one of them took me far longer than I would have expected to beat. I know I said Boltreaver is a personal hurdle for me, but it didn't take me too long to actually claim victory against it. No, today's beast was a hurdle that seemed to laugh at my best efforts for quite a while. The Silver Ridge, Elderfrost Gammoth. This titanic beast had my number rung from the second I first fought her, and looking back, it still makes me laugh. Elderfrost Gammoth comes about extremely rarely, like most deviants. Similar to Silverwind though, an Elderfrost power and prestige comes about not only from surviving to what is considered her golden years, but doing so in some of the harshest and coldest environments there is. To survive in such places, they not only grew to a truly gargantuan size, I mean, many expeditioners making their way through blizzards mistake them for the foot of a mountain until she moves. Being alive for so long, it's little surprise that an Elderfrost has picked up more than a few tricks on the way. First off is that you should expect, they are much stronger and tougher than a regular Gammoth, but that doesn't come as a surprise. I say this so you're not surprised when it feels like you're smashing your head into a brick wall like I did when I fought her. Instead of only covering her feet in snow to increase her defenses, Elderfrost has learned to cover both her feet and trunk in jagged layers of ice, which under enough force, launch these shards at enemies, increasing her attack range way more than you would expect. Having spent their lives navigating through such biomes, she is no stranger to bulldozing through snow and ice, which is a tactic she will happily use against you, and also she's very fond of snowball fights. Let's just say it's a little one-sided when she decides to play. Also, one last thing is that her lungs are now strong enough to allow them to create blizzards to keep you at range, or bring you in quickly to get crushed. Bringing down a titan of this caliber is no small feat, but doing so gets you access to some truly fantastic gear. The armor looks exactly what I want to wear during the winter, like come on. And the weapons are great. My personal picks are the Elderfrost Boom Heavy Bowgun and the Elderfrost Stampede Insect Glaive. One thing I have to include in this is that one of Elderfrost's official nicknames is Grandma, just because she's now gotten old and grey. I love this monster so much, again because it's a simple and fitting upgrade to its base form, and it's so much fun to fight, despite my own skill issue. Recently, I revealed one of my top 3 favorite deviants, and to any of you that have been watching my stuff for any length of time, this one comes as no surprise, because today we are going to discuss what in my opinion is the best brute wyvern. They call him the blade that burns all to ash. He is the one and only Hellblade Glavenus. It's not been long since I've been able to be so obviously biased with a monster, but I think this one warrants it. These monsters come about as a result of a Glavenus ingesting large quantities of the flammable ore on its tail by constantly sharpening it. This increased intake of minerals causes them to burn much hotter. Also, shavings from its tail will stick to the rest of their bodies, which when combined with the heat will burn and cause its carapace to darken. Also, their spikes constantly vent heat, which has turned them a bright red. Now, just looking cooler isn't the only side effect of such a habit. These minerals that stick to their bodies become carbonized, and as a result of this change, when they fight, flakes of it will fly off and explode due to the heat and force. Yeah, just about every inch of this monster is explosive. Their internal temperature is also so high that it keeps their tails in sharpen mode constantly, which is about as dangerous as it sounds. So you may be wondering what happens when they then rip their tails through their mouths now. Yep, They coat their tails in the explosive minerals, making it so that every swing from this freaking tail blade is explosive. Hellblade has also achieved a frightening level of mastery wielding its blade compared to any regular Glavenus, having much more combos in its basic attacks and even improving its tailspin attack to now hit twice. What may surprise some of you when fighting them is how fast their projectile attacks now are, so keep an eye out for that. Having so much more ore in its throat makes it a key weak point, because if you attack it and make it explode early, it heavily stuns the Glavenus, leaving them wide open. Fighting these beasts is a true test of skill and mastery over your chosen weapon, and should you claim victory, it rewards you accordingly, with some of the best armor I have seen. By the gods, this is such an upgrade. And the weapons? Yeah, they just speak for themselves. Is it any surprise that the Magma Nova Sword and Shield and Shard Nova Greatsword are my favorites? Hellblade Glavenus was also the original king of the Deviants, being the strongest there was in generations. And while he may be dethroned, this absolute unit of a monster is still one of the best in my eyes. Do you guys want to know something that I find completely hilarious? Is that when you search my name on YouTube, the top result is a monster that I have not even covered yet. And a friend of mine told me about this over 5 months ago. Well, I say let's give the people what they want, because today, let's talk about the Silver Wings Star, the Sky Comet Dragon, the fourth and final flagship of the 4th generation, Valstrax. For centuries, these creatures were mistaken as natural anomalies, as all most ever saw was a flaming red comet in the sky, seen as an omen of misfortune, as when it passes, shards of metal fell from the sky and wreaked havoc. Seen as either a legend or an extinct species, the Valstrax remained a mystery to the guild, until the Soratorium allowed them to explore the skies. But Valstrax wasn't keen on sharing. These Elder Dragons are best known for their speed, and by the gods, they are true specialists. A Valstrax is an ingenious combination of a Peregrine Falcon, an SR-71 Blackbird, and a Metallic Dragon. Who the hell at Capcom comes up with this stuff? Because I hope they're having a great day. Valstrax is capable of flying at Mach 1 at a minimum, which translates to over 700 miles an hour. To achieve these ludicrous speeds, they have a specialized respiratory system which converts oxygen into dragon energy, which they blast out of their truly incredible wings. These wings are a true marvel in every sense of the word. They are already freaking jet engines, which, how is that not enough? But as soon as it reverses their position, they now become 6 articulate blades and cannons, with each having incredible range and power. They can even combine the blades into pretty much a lance that triples their range. And as if everything I mentioned about it so far wasn't enough, when pushed, they take in a large amount of air to perform their ambush attack. They fly off into the air, breaking the sound barrier initially, and then, breaking it again, they charge straight at you at Mach 2. Its eyes are some of the best this world has ever produced, ensuring that even at such speeds, they won't miss. They're at their weakest when intaking the air they need to charge up, so attacking their chests as they intake oxygen can cause some real internal damage to them when it explodes. If you manage to take one of them down, the rewards couldn't be more worth your while. The armor is just flawless. Honestly, I've got no extra notes here, and the weapons all look incredible. The Silverwing Greatsword, Cannon, and Glaive are by far my favorites. Valstrax is up there as truly one of the finest creations that the Monster Hunter team has ever made. Truly, it is an achievement of creature design. Not realistic, but fun. Can you imagine a creature that is so rare and striking that any hunter, even rumored to have died fighting it, is expectedly tragic, but earns the envy of hunters as they believe it was worth that to have even laid their eyes upon such a creature? Well, that creature is none other than the Pallas Mantis, the Atal Ka. It took me a few attempts writing this script to fully articulate just how happy I am that this monster exists.
First off, its core design inspiration comes from the stunning Devil Flower Mantis, which is just stunning. This alone was enough for me because the other Neoterrans cover a great range of arachnids, beetles, and wasps, but mantids are my favorite among this entire class. When fighting, she makes full use of those sharp sickles, which is to be expected, but I promise you that unless you have already fought this creature, you have no chance of predicting what else she can do. Atelka are only ever seen in isolated fortresses, because she only attacks them for what are seemingly random materials that she hoards from them. And the other reason why they're so rare is because they never leave witnesses. Using their fine gold and silk, Atelka can lift and weaponize these materials, like giant steel girders, giant gears, and freaking dragonators. This is done through the intricate web of silk she's made throughout her entire arena, which allows her to rip and control these weapons right out of the ground. But being strong enough like this just isn't enough. No, she is also frighteningly intelligent. Intelligent enough to learn from threats and weaponize them. She gathers man-made materials because she knows that to make a nest, they're not only stronger, they last longer. And the one we encounter must have been frightened at one point by some kind of dragon because when pushed, she creates what's been called the Empress's Throne, which is a gigantic mech made of parts of a fortress which she controls and manipulates through the network of silk like a freaking nervous system. And when I say gigantic, it's bigger than Lao Shan Lung. To fight this behemoth, you need to attack key weak points because otherwise you're not doing anything to it. Points like the silk cocoon she's encased in, or you have to attack enough of the silk threads holding it together until she's forced to abandon it and fight you herself to end it all. Yes, that giant mech is only phase 2, and she can do it multiple times. But with enough damage, even a creature like this will meet its end. Claiming victory over this Golden Queen will net you some gorgeous armor, but the weapons are the real showstoppers here, each one having a different form when unsheathed. Honestly, it's hard for me to pick a favorite amongst them, but the gold blades, glaive, greatsword stand tall for me. This monster is just like Valstrax in that it can only be described as incredible. It looks gorgeous, the fight is unbelievable, and as a final boss, it's just true royalty. The 4th generation of Monster Hunter is truly one of the best in my opinion. Every generation has brought us incredible monsters, characters, and memories that we all forge on our path. But the 4th stands out to me on its own level. And to cap off this incredible journey through it, only one monster was worthy of claiming the title of its king. The Horns of Fury, the Massacre Demon, and the King of the Deviants, the Bloodbath Diablos. This creature is violence, rage, and raw hatred given physical form. This is the story of how the one we encountered came to be. When it was a juvenile, a hunter broke off one of its horns and then failed to slay it. Losing a horn is a traumatic ordeal for a Diablos at any point in its life. Normally, a young Diablos would have simply died soon after such an ordeal, but Bloodbath? No. It fought its way through every ordeal it faced, becoming stronger. And while the horn did grow back, its mangled state perfectly reflects the psyche of the monster. But he also held on to the memory of what did this to him, and actively sought out humans to kill. It's unknown how many settlements it's destroyed, but what is known is that no one ever survived its attacks. Armies were sent after him only to be slaughtered. The only proof of their efforts is the dried blood covering its shell. Any specialized hunters that were sent after him either ended up dead or physically broken. It took the combined efforts of 2 legendary hunters to simply repel this creature, but such a hatred is not easily quelled. Bloodbath sees any human as a threat to it and will attack with all its might. They will roar before charging to stun most enemies and leave them wide open to be gored. Their physical strength is unrivaled, but it goes even further when enraged, as they begin their onslaught and their entire body goes into overdrive. Their blood literally boils so hot that the dried viscera all over their bodies begins to steam, and they will then weaponize this through flash steaming these liquids, causing explosions. Their full onslaught is not something just anyone can survive, but should you pull it off, you'll not only count yourself amongst the best, but also get to create this armor easily
one of the best ever made. I can't add any more than that. The weapons also may be simple, but they're worth the grind. The Bai Chi Glaive and Vladis Greatsword are my all-time favorites. Bloodbath hits every note I want in a monster. It has a great story. The fight lives up to the legend, and the rewards are worth putting yourself through hell to get them. Bloodbath exceeded my every possible standard when I first encountered him, and he rightfully stands at the pinnacle of the 4th generation.